classic horror actors. I am a big classic horror fan. I don't know what it is specifically about classic horror. There's a mosquito floating around in front of me. Okay. I don't know what it is about classic horror that I love so much. I admire the way, you know, they could get into our heads, and it's more chilling and creepy, and a story was told, and the effects, oh my gosh, the effects that they achieved with so little. Oh, I could just rant on about that. But for today's top 8 list, I decided to choose my top 8 classic actors, and what films that I love them in. And I have a question for you. Do you like classic horror? If you do, please tell me why in the comments down below, or why not. It may not be your thing. Tell me why. I love hearing those things. And stay tuned for next week when we will be doing a top 8 for classic Scream Queens, because let me tell you something. Classics to me is where it's at. And so here we go. Number 1. He will always be my number 1, and that is the Man of 1,000 Faces, Lon Chaney. Lon Chaney was, amazing, the way that he could convey his emotions and the makeup that he did. As a kid, my grandmother, got the Phantom of the Opera DVD from 1925. And, when I saw the makeup that he did, even though it's not scary to us today because of all the stuff that we have going on, but back then, I could completely understand why it was freaky. It made me feel awesome and alive in a way, and the talent he had to make all these different characters. You could tell he obviously loved his craft, and he will forever be my number 1. I thank the gods of horror that we were blessed with Lon Chaney, and my 2 favorite films from him are The Phantom of the Opera and The Unknown. And even though he did mostly silent films, there's just, man, I sometimes wonder what he would have achieved if he was in present day. But that's a mystery we will never know. Okay, number 2, Vincent Price. Of course, you probably heard me tons of times on this channel mention that I'm a Vincent Price fan. I feel like he was really good with conveying the story in all his movies. And something about his voice that made you want to pay attention. It kind of gave you the chills, and it was his natural, it seemed to be like natural to him. It wasn't an act per se. Obviously he was acting, but if you know what I'm saying, it just seemed perfect for him. And the 2 favorite films from him are House on Haunted Hill and The Bat, which is kind of like a whodunit crime horror. It's a remake of a silent film called The Bat. If you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out. Number 3, Boris Karloff. I had the pleasure of meeting his daughter Sarah at my first horror convention. Beautiful woman, had great things to say about her father. Boris Karloff, I loved his TV series Thriller. I have it on DVD set. He was another one, and all these classic guys have one thing in common. Not only did some of them work together in a lot of movies, it's just the way they acted is so freaking believable. In the presence of Boris Karloff, it just seemed like his characters brought you deeper into the story. And to me, it's always the way that he would look when I watched the movies. When he would look, when he's in character in the movies and say his lines. To me, that's what was like, oh, this is a bit weird. So, two favorites, Frankenstein, obviously, and The Black Room. Okay, number 4 is Mr. Bela Lugosi. To me, Bela Lugosi is 100% the only Dracula. The accent, the charm, the way that he portrayed himself and held himself. He was the most believable Dracula of all time. And honestly, I can't think of anybody else that could match up to his role. Even when later on, when I watched some Christopher Lee Draculas, to me, it just wasn't. Christopher Lee's awesome, and he's on this list too, but Bela Lugosi takes the cake for Dracula. And any other of the horror movies from the 50s that he's in, and the 40s, and all that stuff, oh my gosh, it's just fantastic the way he can draw people in. And so obviously one of my favorites is Dracula, and the other one is White Zombie. That is a definitely good movie, and if you haven't seen it, check it out. He's really awesome in it. Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee is just an amazing person in general. I mean, come on, the man was in his 90s when he made a metal band. If you don't watch horror, you would know him from like Lord of the Rings, or if you know updated horror, he was in Sleepy Hollow with Johnny Depp in them. But I know him from The Satanic Rites of Dracula. I bought the DVD for 79 cents at a garage sale, and that was my intro to Christopher Lee. But he played some really weird, interesting roles, kind of like the B side to me, in my opinion, of horror in the 60s and 70s. A lot of weird, bizarre things happen in those movies. But honestly, again, another actor who can definitely draw you in. And I think it was his booming presence that did it. My two favorite films from him are The Curse of Frankenstein and The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll. And now we're moving on to number 6. Peter Cushing. You can't have a list of classic horror actors without him. Basically, obviously he's in like a lot of movies with these other fellas, and he always is the one to figure out the problem, it seems, or the Van Helsing type, and he did really good with that. I think he really played a good hero. Is that the word I'm looking for? My two favorite films from him are The Bride's Dracula and The Curse of Frankenstein. Number 7 is Lon Chaney Jr. Really not super famous as his dad, but Lon Chaney Jr. is a great classic horror actor. I feel like he kind of gets pushed aside because of Mr. Senior there. But his acting is wonderful, especially in, those cheesy movies of the 40s and 50s there. They kind of over-exaggerate, but he kind of brings it in. Sorry, I didn't really say much. My two favorites from him are The Wolfman and Strange Confession. And then the last one, he's mainly known for Casablanca, but it's Claude Rains. His acting in The Invisible Man is fantastic. I absolutely love it. I enjoy it. And again, the way they had to do the effects in that movie and the way that he acted as the Invisible Man brought the story together. I think he was the perfect spot for the role. And, it's just, these men they can't be replaced. You just don't find actors in the genre like this today. It is very hard for me to follow modern horror actors. My other favorite, besides The Invisible Man from Claude Rains, is Phantom of the Opera. So, I hope you enjoyed this list. I know it's a little bit rambly. Had a hectic day with my truck breaking down Blue Betty, but she's okay. She's fixed and ready. So, tune in next week for top 8 horror Scream Queens, the classic version. And we will do a modern version as well, but that's coming at a later time. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.